So in this video, I'm going to show you guys how I restore one of these old quarter-inch thick smokers you can find sometimes on Facebook Marketplace or on Craigslist or just at junk sales and tag sales and things like that. Sometimes you can find them for 100, maybe 150 bucks, and they're worth picking up. There's several manufacturers that made them. Of course, around here in Stillwater, Oklahoma Joe's made them back in the 80s and I think early 90s out of real thick quarter-inch steel. And then Brinkman also made them that thick and almost the same form factor. And then like Charbroiler, I think it was Charbroiler, maybe it was Char Griller, one of those brands. Doesn't matter what brand they are though. If you can find an old smoker that's a quarter-inch thick, even if it's rusty looking and maybe been abused and sat outside for a long time, they're really worth picking up if you can. They're really, really heavy, so have a friend there to pick one up. But if you can get one for, under $200, then it's really worth doing. They'll work just fine just the way they are, but I like to restore them completely. I'm going to do this one for a buddy of mine. He's wanted one for a long time, and so I'm going to surprise him with it and just fully restore it and show you guys how I do these. I think I've done 9 or 10 of these now, and they're a lot of fun. You have to have a few tools, but it's a fun project. So enjoy. Thanks. This is the Oklahoma Joe smoker that I was talking about. It's in really good shape. It has, I'm gonna guess it's a little bit later model than the original Oklahoma Joes. They went through several different kind of models as they went on through the years. They did some stuff different on them and things like that. But this one's in pretty good shape. Whoever owned it before definitely had a coating put on it of some sort, or they painted it with some sort of coating. Like I said before, my friend likes the rust patina that I've done on other ones, so that's what we'll do on this one. We'll take, so what I'll do is I'll weld the handle on so it's not removable. I'll weld the very tops of the legs to the belly of the smoker. There's big heavy set bolts down there that hold them on now. I'll just tack them on in place, same thing with the rear legs. Spring handles are good on it. This is stainless steel, but it's been coated also, so I'll have that blasted off at the sandblaster along with everything else. I will move this thermometer hole right here. I'll move that down here, and I'll put a secondary one over here down at the grate level. And regarding the grates, they come with these stainless steel grates like this. There's 2 of them in there, but I will build a new 1/2-inch bar stock grate for this one because it's just a lot better. Firebox is fine. Sometimes I have to mess with the fireboxes a little bit too. They seize up, sometimes the doors do, but this one works great. It's in good condition. And then I will build a rack down there, a coal rack out of angle iron to help with the burn. And that's really about it. We'll get to work on this thing and then get it down to the sandblaster and get it polished down to white metal, put a patina on it, and I might do some something fancy here for Fred. So there's the beginning, and this one's in really good shape, but it'll come out great when we're done. So what I like to do on these is I go ahead and remove all the spring handles and the little axles that hold them. I get rid of the tray out front, take it off, take the handle off the smoker that moves it around. Remove all these things so that I can get to work on it, and they're going to be sandblasted anyway. Take these cooking grates out. These are those little stainless steel ones that come with it. They're great. They're fine, but I like to put a bigger one in, so we're going to remove those. We're going to remove this handle for now. Drill off any of the plates. These are just riveted on, so they drill out pretty easily. And then we'll go to working on this thing, doing the metal work on it. That pipe nipple up there is what accepted the thermometer on these original Brinkmans, Char Griller, or Oklahoma Joe smokers. But I like the thermometers to be down near the cook grate level. So I just cut this off with a thin wheel, and then I grind it on down and fill it with the MIG welder. I also fill the holes where the rivets were holding the brass plate on. And then we'll drill new holes here in a moment down there to accept the new thermometers. A nice little Lincoln MIG welder. It makes quick work of this. They're pretty inexpensive, and if you've never welded with one before, I'd suggest trying one out. They're not very much to get into one, and they're 110 volts, and they work great for things like this. Everything up to 1/4-inch steel they're great on, so I use them all the time. So here I'm just filling that hole from the front and the back, and then I'll grind it and sand it smooth. And really, at the end of the day, when we're done, you'd be pretty hard pressed to find where that hole was. It certainly won't stick out. I think I've restored 8 or 10 of these smokers now. And I generally do these things to all of them. I like to move the thermometers down. I like to weld all the legs and everything in place like we're about to do. I like to weld that seam between the stack and the smoke chamber. Those stacks are made to be removable so that they could ship easier, but there's no reason I would ever remove the smoke stack from one of these, and some smoke can get out there, so I like to weld that up before I finish it with either paint or like the rust patina we're doing today. I like to do all this work beforehand. So here I'm just checking my center for where the thermometer holes are going to go. And I just drill holes. I'm using a step bit and some cutting oil here. I do not weld pipe nipples back in place to accept the thermometers, because when you screw that thermometer in, whenever it gets tight, you don't know where it's going to be oriented. And most smoker thermometers come with a nut on the back of their threads anyway, so you can put it in there at whatever orientation you want and tighten it if it's just a hole. So that's what I do. I just drill holes, and then I deburr them a little bit, and that part's done. So here's what I was talking about earlier. You can see that big gap between where in the pipe that's made to accept the smokestack. So I grind the paint off so I can get a nice heavy weld around there to hold it on there and to seal that up. There's a big set bolt on the bottom of it. You can see right behind my torch here in a minute. And that's what holds it on there unless you weld it. None of this is necessarily necessary when you buy one of these used smokers. I just like to do it all, especially if you're going to send it to the sandblaster. Do all this beforehand. I'm welding the legs in place. There's just no reason to ever take them off there again, so. These things are really heavy. I think they weigh just south of 400 pounds. They're quite a bear to get into your pickup. So if you ever buy one on Craigslist or somewhere like that, which I hope you do, have some manpower ready to get one of those things in the back of your truck or on a trailer. They're pretty darn heavy. I'll go ahead and weld these handles in place too. They're made to pop out of there, but they're once you pick it up with and move it around. So I like to have it welded in place. And like I said, I wanted to do some decoration on this lid. Generally, I put the word Rust across there, which is my brand name. But I figured I'd put his name in there in the same font. So we're going to use 1/4-inch thick plate plasma cut letters on there. And I just take the template that I sent to the plasma cutter, the line art, and I use it as my template to show where my letters go after I print it out and cut it out with an X-Acto knife. Gives me a good template to go by. And now I'm going to punch where my holes will be. I'm going to drill holes where those letters will be in that smoker lid. That way I can weld them from behind into the plate. I also tack the letters in an inconspicuous place on the front of the smoker. But I like these rear holes to be in there because they add a tremendous amount of stability to that weld, to those letters. These smoker lids are really heavy, and if you drop one, like you slips out of your hand, there's a tremendous amount of force it comes down with, and I'm always afraid that much force could rack these letters and break them off there if the welds aren't strong. So I kind of overkill on the welding of the letters. So I'm doing a 2-stage drilling process here with a 1/16 and then a 3/16 inch drill bit, so I can have a nice big hole to weld through the back of the lid into the letters. Then I put the bottom of the template back down there just for good measure, just to make sure everything's right on. And then I use these big welding magnets, to kind of block in my letters and hold them in place. That way when I open the lid to weld them from behind, they're held in place well. And I also use electrical tape. There's lots of stuff I do to hold those letters exactly where I want them to be. And then you can just take the MIG wire feed welder and from the back, weld a bead into that plate steel and the lid. really making them secure. I don't guess you watchers are going to be welding any big heavy plate steel onto your smokers if you restore them, but I just wanted to show you how I do this. This is a 1/2 inch solid cold rolled bar stock steel. This is what I like to make the grates out of, the cooking grates. It's very heavy, but it's big. That big round diameter like that makes it easy to clean. Everything washes right off of it and pushes off with a brush after you're done smoking. And it's real big and heavy. It's a lot of thermal mass, so you hold more heat. It acts like a big heat sink inside the belly of your smoker, and that's always good. You lose less of your heat when you open the lid. It can recover quickly. And then I'm just going to deburr all these. If it looks like there's a lot of steel there is, that's because I'm building 2 grates. Since I have a jig set up over my workbench to build the grate, I figured I would go ahead and build the 2 at the same time. That's why there's so many bars here. It's a pretty easy process. I just put the long legs of steel down against the screws here on top of the short ones as spacers. And then I can just weld them all in place. I already have my screws set up as a square against the back of the workbench. So it's pretty simple. And then when I begin welding, you can see I will use one of the bars in between each of the bars as I go to weld, and it will make a good spacer for me. So I have 1/2 inch bars with 1/2 inch spaces. You can see there that bar I put in between each time, and it keeps my spaces even. I still check it with the measuring tape every now and then to be sure, but it goes just fine. So there's that big heavy one, heavy cook grate. Now this is the fire grate. This is a design by my friend Jim, and Jim makes these out of angle iron. You just takes 2 angle irons pieces and lays them down, and then 90 degrees to that, perpendicular to it, he lays other angle iron with the point up. And that allows the ash to fall down through the cracks that you leave between the angle iron, and it gives you a lot of airflow underneath your fire, so you get a good even burn. I really like using the one that he gave me, so I'm going to make some for... I actually make 3 of them today, but I'm just showing in the video one of them. They're really easy to do. I'm just using some scrap angle iron that I have. This is very heavy gauge angle iron. It's probably overkill, but it's going to be in a pretty hard environment, so it's okay for it to be heavy gauge. And then you just put them in the middle. No real reason to measure perfectly. And there we have our fire grate. Here's the smoker after it comes back from the sandblaster, polished down to white metal. And I've coated it with vinegar. As you can see, it started to rust on there. I like to coat the whole smoker in vinegar before I do this, which is, this is my concoction. It's a couple tablespoons of salt, and it's a little bit of vinegar, and then the whole rest of the bottle is hydrogen peroxide. And then we'll go over to that smoker that's been drying with vinegar on it, and I sprinkle some salt on the outside, and then I'll start spraying it with that mixture, and you can see it starts rusting immediately. And that really works well if you coated it with vinegar first, like I did earlier. The reason I put salt on there is it gives it that non-uniform look. See, it's all dark and light in some places. Now I'm giving it another coat. I usually give it 2 or 3 coats of this hydrogen peroxide mixture and just let it dry on there. And it makes just a beautiful rust patina after a couple days. See there how it's looking? And the salt is what gives it those dark and light ones. When you dump the salt on there, it kind of islands up and piles up, and it gives those different hues. Then I wash it off with a garden hose with a sprayer, spray it off really, really good, and let it dry overnight. And this is what it looks like right here in the morning. So now it's time to seal it. This is my sealant. I'm using 1 part boiled linseed oil with 1 part mineral spirits, and I just kind of flood it on there liberally, and then I wipe it off with a rag, to kind of get it consistent. If you use raw linseed oil, it takes a really long time to dry, but this boiled linseed oil hardens on there in about 48 hours and just gives a really good finish. So here I'm taking the rag and kind of wiping off the excess, and then I just let it sit outside in the sun for 2 or 3 days, and it hardens right up. Gives it a beautiful sheen when it's done, and it's very protective in the elements. It's pretty heat resistant. And it coats that rust perfectly. So there it is, hardened. And that linseed oil just gets rock hard on there. Makes a great sealant for metal. You can also use this on your shovels and your rakes and your forks and things that go outside. So here's the smoker completed. We've got the thermometers in there. The spring handles are on the doors and painted black. And then the tray is out front. It's also been painted black. Of course, the fire grate is in here. It just sits inside the radius of that firebox, and you can see the oil in the lid up there. I've been oiling the inside of the lid. There's the fire grate. And then, of course, the cook grates. The cook grates are in the inside in there. A 1/2-inch bar stock. So that's what they turn out like if you put a rust patina on them and go through the restoration process that I like to go through on these old Oklahoma Joes. I think it's a really attractive piece. I really like working on these, and I sure appreciate you guys watching my video. Thanks.